You know that moment when you're in a group and everyone else seems to be speaking just a little too quickly? Like the conversation is moving on the surface, skipping across something you can feel, but no one is naming? You're there, listening, not just to the words, but to the pauses between them. The slight shift in someone's tone, the glance someone avoids. You notice who's trying too hard, who's holding back, who's not saying what they actually mean. And sometimes by the time you've figured it out, the moment has already passed. People might assume you're disengaged, or shy, or that you just don't have much to say. Maybe you've even been told that you need to speak up more, as if silence is something to fix. But what they don't see is that your quiet isn't empty, it's full. There's a certain kind of person who experiences the world this way. And they're often misunderstood, not because there's something missing, but because there's something happening beneath the surface that most people don't notice. And that's really what this is about. Like quiet people aren't just silent. They're observing. And there's more going on there than people realize. Psychologically, observation isn't just a personality trait. It's a pattern of attention. Some brains are wired to scan the environment more deeply before responding. Instead of reacting outwardly, they process inwardly. Research in neuroscience often points to differences in how people filter stimulation. For quieter individuals, the brain's sensory processing systems tend to be more sensitive, not in a fragile way, but in a detailed way. More information comes in, more nuance gets registered. So while others might catch the main idea of a conversation, you're picking up the subtext, the emotional undercurrent, the inconsistencies. It's not that you're slower, it's that you're taking in more. And when your brain is processing that much information, it naturally prioritizes understanding over immediate response. There's also something happening with what psychologists call social monitoring. Some people are more attuned to group dynamics, who feels included, who feels excluded, who's shifting the emotional tone of the room. This kind of awareness requires attention, restraint, and a certain distance from the spotlight, which often looks like quietness, but it's actually active perception. And this pattern doesn't usually appear out of nowhere. It often has roots in experience. Sometimes it develops in environments where paying attention was important. Maybe emotions weren't always spoken directly, so you learned to read between the lines. Maybe you grew up around strong personalities where speaking up meant navigating carefully. Or maybe you simply learned over time that observing first helped you understand people better. The nervous system adapts to what it repeatedly encounters. If your environment rewarded awareness, subtlety, or caution, your brain learned to prioritize those things, not as a preference, as a strategy. And over time, that strategy becomes part of how you move through the world. It's important to say this clearly, though. This way of being isn't better than being expressive, outspoken, or fast moving in conversation, and it isn't worse either. Some people process externally. They think by talking, by reacting, by engaging in real time. Others process internally. They think by observing, by reflecting, by waiting until something feels fully formed. Both are valid. Both have strengths, both have limitations. The problem isn't the difference, it's how quickly we label one as normal and the other as something that needs correction, because when quiet observation is misunderstood, it can start to feel like invisibility. And that's where things get complicated. There's a quiet paradox in being an observer. The more accurately you see people, the less you feel seen yourself. You notice everything about others, their patterns, their contradictions, their emotional shifts, but because you're not constantly expressing your own inner world, people don't always know how much is happening inside you. So they assume there isn't much. And over time, that can create a strange kind of distance, not because you're disconnected, but because your depth isn't immediately visible. There's also a trade off. When you're highly observant, it's harder to ignore what you notice. You pick up on tensions others overlook. You sense when something feels off, even if no one else acknowledges it. You recognize patterns in people that they may not even see in themselves. That kind of awareness can be grounding, but it can also be heavy. Because once you see something clearly, it's difficult to unsee it. And yet, there's a quiet strength in this. Observation creates understanding. Understanding creates empathy, And empathy, real empathy, the kind that comes from truly seeing people, is something the world doesn't have enough. You're not just hearing words, you're reading meaning. You're not just watching behavior, you're noticing intention. And even if you don't always say it out loud, that awareness shapes how you relate to people. It makes you more thoughtful in your responses, more precise in your reactions, more aware of impact. It's a different rhythm, not slower, just deeper. If you've ever felt like you're on the edge of conversations rather than in the center of them, it doesn't mean you don't belong there. It means you're engaging with the moment in a different way, one that isn't always visible, one that doesn't always get recognized, but one that matters. There's nothing broken about taking your time to understand before you speak. There's nothing lacking about noticing more than you say. And there's nothing wrong with being someone who sees things quietly. Because the truth is, not everything valuable is loud. Some of it is subtle, some of it is patient, some of it is the kind of awareness that doesn't announce itself, but changes how people feel in your presence anyway. And if this feels familiar, there's probably more about the way you experience the world that hasn't been put into words yet, but it's there. And once you start recognizing it, you begin to see yourself a little more clearly too. If that resonates, there's more to explore.